Iran's president says his country will remain committed to its nuclear deal with the West, even if the U.S. pulls out. The Financial Times reports Hassan Rouhani said yesterday Iran's leaders already consider the U.S. no longer a party to the deal. Great Britain is one of the other nations involved. Tonight, my colleague Bret Baier talks with the British ambassador to the U.S. about Iran and other critical issues.
Mr. Ambassador, thanks for the time.
Thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to go over a couple of items that obviously are very important between the U.S. and Great Britain. One is Iran and the constant threat from Iran, but also what is going on with the Iran nuclear deal. And what's the view in the U.K. about things?
Well, first thing to say is that we agree with this administration, agree with the president, that what Iran is doing in the region, whether in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen, is unacceptable. We need to work together to push back on Iranian influence and activities in the region. We also agree with the administration in terms of concerns about Iran's ballistic missile development, and we are talking now about ways of addressing that. We think the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, is not a perfect deal, but it's a good deal, and it helps. It's good for European international security. But we hear what the president says about it. We understand that he has some concerns about it. So we're also working with the administration to see if we can find a way forward that preserves the deal.
He obviously laid down the gauntlet this last time, saying it's the last time he's going to renew it if it's not changed. It leaves the ball in Congress's court and also the international community. How likely is that going to happen?
I think the next waiver comes up in May. There was a meeting only last week of senior officials to address the issues that concern the president. So we'll be working to try and get a way forward that all of us can sign up to. But we know that in Congress they will have a role and a view on this as well. So we talk a lot to them, to both sides of the aisle, to Democrats and Republicans, about a way forward.
What about the relationship between the UK and the US? This president obviously has said and tweeted some things that have raised a lot of eyebrows in your country. He said recently, the reason I canceled my trip to London is that I'm not a big fan of the Obama administration having sold perhaps the best located, finest embassy in London for peanuts, only to build a new one in an off location for $1.2 billion. Bad deal. Wanted me to cut ribbon? No. And then he says to the Prime Minister, Theresa May, don't focus on me, focus on the destructive radical Islamic terrorism that's taking place within the UK. We're doing just fine. That was back in November. Obviously, there's tension. The London mayor, others. How do you characterize the relationship?
It's a good, strong relationship, and they meet and talk a lot. We had the privilege of the Prime Minister being the first visitor to see the President. Since then, I think they've met probably half a dozen times at international meetings. They talk on the telephone every few weeks. They met in Davos only a week ago. A truly and really successful meeting. The relationship is very good at that level. Beyond that, of course, Brett, it's a hugely strong relationship in lots of other areas. Intelligence, security, defense, and the trade relationship, $200 billion worth of trade both ways. And with Brexit and the potential for doing a free trade agreement between the UK and the US, the future is going to be even bigger.
So you're saying, despite the occasional dust-up that may be a little iceberg, that there's a lot more under the water in this iceberg as far as the relationship?
Exactly. I mean, I've been 40 years in the Foreign Service. I've seen a number of presidents and prime ministers. There has never, I think, been a moment when the relationship hasn't been really deep and strong, but also never a moment when there hasn't been one or two issues on which we disagree.
Two more things. You mentioned terrorism. Dealing with terrorist attacks. 5 attacks in 2017 in the UK. MI5 saying they're running approximately 500 operations looking at 3,000 subjects of interest. Radical Islam is still a major concern for the UK as it is for the US.
MI5 do an extraordinary job in combating radical Islamic terrorism, in preempting terrorist crimes before they happen. But the threat is ever present. It's going to be there for a generation. And we will be intensifying our efforts to tackle it and working with our partners, including, of course, here in Washington, to take this on.
Finally, you mentioned Brexit, and there is still a lot of angst about how this is all going to work. I know in the UK, obviously, figuring it out, but in the world economy and how it's going to affect things. Where do you put it now and the prospects of Brexit?
The next task is to agree transitional arrangements that will give certainty and continuity not just to British but to international businesses present in the UK, and beyond that we need to work out a future trading relationship with the EU. I'm confident we will achieve all of that, but also confident that we have this great opportunity then to forge much stronger trading relationships with the rest of the world, free trade agreements starting with here in the US.
And do you sense that the economy is on the upswing?
The economy is doing fine. I have to say I'm a bit envious of quite how strongly the US economy has performed over the last year or two, but we are growing solidly and steadily.
Mr. Ambassador, we appreciate the time.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.